Melissa Breau, and you're listening to the FDSA Dog Sports Podcast, brought to you by the FDSA Dog Sports Academy, an online school dedicated to providing high-quality instruction for competitive dog sports, using only the most current and progressive training methods. Today, we'll be talking to Laurie Huston about the ins and outs of training agility crosses. Hi, Laurie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me back.
Super excited to chat. So to start everybody out, do you want to just start us out rather? Do you want to just remind everybody a little bit kind of about who you are, your current canine crew, what you're working on with them?
Okay. I'm Laurie and I live in BC. I'm kind of in the southeast corner of BC in Canada. And my crew is, I have an older border collie named Tweak who is retired. So she's just kind of currently keeping everybody in line, like a good border collie should. And then my middle dog is Buck, who is a 7-year-old black lab. He's kind of my superstar right now. He kind of feels like the comfy pair of shoes. And then we recently, at the beginning of the year, brought a little coolie baby into our house. Her name is Nell. And so Nell is kind of learning all the ins and outs of life. And then we also have a cat, Ancho Cat, who just kind of likes to torment everybody. That seems to be his mission in life. And currently we are on the road. I'm up in northern BC teaching. We're just going to start our journey home today.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, I was hoping to have you on to talk a little bit about crosses. So to start us off, can you kind of, I guess, explain what a cross is in case anybody listening to this isn't super agility familiar. And then, for all of us, kind of why fluency with the various crosses is so important for a good agility team.
Sure. I'd love to. A cross is a technique that gives your dog information about what's coming down the line next. So after the current obstacle they take, what they should do next. Should they turn? Should they slow down? Should they increase their speed and extend? So the fluency piece is really, really important because we've got to get our timing and mechanics down so that we can give that information proactively so that before they take that obstacle, they can prepare themselves so they know which way they're going, where they're going. Another piece of fluency that's really, really important, especially for our softer dogs, is that if we're confident in how we execute our crosses, our dogs feed off that. Mm-hmm. So our softer dogs, they gain confidence from us, and kind of higher driving crazy dogs. Sometimes if we're not comfortable and fluent, it can make them even crazier. And they get some dogs just get barky and screamy, and some dogs just shut down if we're not fluent with them. So really that fluency really affects your dog a lot.
What, common problems do you see kind of pop up when a team is on course and they haven't quite figured crosses out, or they haven't mastered them yet?
There are a couple of things that can happen for some of those softer dogs. The dogs can really slow down. They can start to question. They're like, do you know what you're doing? And I think that kind of when I think about it, I think of we are like a co-pilot and our dog is the driver. And I equate it a lot to if you have a co-pilot that gives you really proactive information and tells you hey, in a kilometer, we're going to make a left-hand turn. That makes you really, really confident. And you're likely to probably drive a little faster with that person because you know that they're going to tell you if there's a turn coming up. They're going to tell you if you need to stop or prepare or anything. And then I think we've all driven with that one person who you're driving along at 100 and they're like, hey, you're supposed to turn there. And sometimes you try, right? You slam on the brakes and you grab hold of the steering wheel and the tires are screeching. And then you end up kind of in the other lane. You're not actually in your lane. So yeah, it's really important.
Fair enough. So often I think, at least to me, handling and planning out how you're going to run a course, thinking about it in advance, is essentially thinking about crosses, right? So when to add a cross, which crosses to add, kind of where you want to be. Is that accurate from your perspective? What other pieces do teams maybe need to consider when they're, looking and thinking about this stuff?
Yeah. So when when we're planning how we're going to run out a course, first off, I want to look at the dog's line. I want to kind of see where they need to accelerate, where they need to turn. If there's an off course that maybe I want to make sure that I handle a little bit, I want to add extra clarity in there with my handling. So like, it's like, yeah, it's definitely this. It's not that tunnel that's way out there. I'm screaming your name. Once I figure out kind of like what's on their path and what I want their path to look like, from there, then I can figure out what crosses I want to use to influence their path. That's kind of the main thing that I'm looking at when I first kind of look at to start planning out that course is what that dog's path looks like. Then I figure out how I'm going to support it with handling. And then that's the main piece. Then I'm going to look at the dog that I'm running, because I will make very, very different choices for Buck than I made for Tweak. I had one dog who was really, really soft, and me remaining in connection with him was so important. He did not do well if I turned my back on him or I tried to send him ahead. He really struggled with that. I feel like I have a lot more tools in my toolbox now than when I ran him. But at the time, that really played into the choices that I made for him.
When you're I guess looking at the course map or looking at a course, what maybe says to you, based on what you're looking at, that this is going to be a place where I'm going to add a cross, or like this is going to be a place where I'm going to need to like change my dog's position? Like what factors are you looking at or considering to like figure that out?
So for the most part, I use the course map just to kind of find out like where the numbers are and what the flow of the course looks like, so that when I get to my actual course walking, I know where I'm going and I'm not looking number to number to try and find that. We only have like that predetermined amount of time on the course to figure out what we want to do and like how we're going to execute that, and then get comfortable with executing it. So to minimize the amount of time I'm out there going like, where's number 2? Where's number 3? I use that to find the flow. I don't make plans off that course map. I might say, hey, I might do something here and I might do something there, but I don't make any solid plans off a course map until I've seen it on the ground. The reason being, oftentimes, like, I've yet to see a course that is built exactly the same as it is on the map. You get out there and you start looking at lines and you're like, wow, this is way different than it looked on that course map. So if I get like kind of set in my mind and say like, hey, I'm going to do a front cross there. We as humans have a tendency to stop looking at the actual line on the ground and like, we've already made our plan. I'm going to do front cross there. Whereas if you go out there and you look at your dog's line and you kind of look at, okay, well, actually now it's looking like it might be better with a rear cross, because you looked at it on the ground and you saw what the dog was seeing, whereas you don't see that from a course map.
Based on that, when you're walking the course, do you walk it as the dog's line or do you walk it as your line? Do you do both? Like, how are you thinking about that piece? Because you said see it from the dog's perspective.
Yeah. So the first thing I do is I walk the dog's line. Because that is going to tell me what exactly they are seeing. From our space, like we're kind of running like that 3 to 5 feet at least. Sometimes we're running at a greater distance than that. So we really don't see what's on our dog's line from our running path. Once I figure out my dog's line, my running path is going to be parallel to that all the time. Then it's figuring out how I maintain that parallel path and I give them that information proactively about what's coming next.
Interesting. Can you talk to me a little bit about how we go from, thinking kind of conceptually, I guess, about crosses to actually implementing them well? How do factors like, timing and our mechanics kind of factor into those pieces so that, we are giving the dogs the information they need when they need them?
Yeah. So when we're thinking like conceptually, it's great to talk about it and to say, hey, you're doing it here and your dog is there. And when we add in the dog, that's like so much pressure on us. We have no clue how much pressure our dogs add to us until we take them away. So what I really encourage people to do is work on their footwork without the dog. Think about your imaginary dog after you've mastered that footwork. So first go out there, really figure out the footwork, figure out your space and time, and where you are in relation to the obstacles. Because I think we get thinking so much about footwork. We get our footwork down, but we're thinking so much about that footwork. We have no idea where we are in relation to the obstacles, because
Yeah.
we're humans. We can only think of one thing at a time. We
Yeah.
don't multitask super, super well. So if we can just kind of focus in on that one thing at a time, like focus in on getting your footwork, or the timing of your head turn, or the timing of your hand changes. If you focus on one of those pieces at a time, get all of your body pieces really, really comfortable without the dog, and then get yourself comfortable in your relation to the spacing between the obstacles. So you know where you are when you're doing it, then getting the dog out. That really, really helps with your timing and mechanics, because then you have all of those pieces down before you add the pressure of the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then really breaking it down. So I like to, just like I would for my dog, I like to break it down for the human too, so that we don't add too much at once. I think so many times people are trying to learn across in a sequence, and that's not the place to learn it. The place to learn it is like break it down. Can you do it on the ground with no equipment around? And
Yeah.
then let's add in one piece of equipment. Let's add in two pieces of equipment. Let's add in some speed. Then let's go ahead and start sequencing it, so that we really have a chance to learn it, and the speed just kind of slowly starts to increase to
Mm-hmm.
normal.
I mean, I feel like the hardest part, right? At least for me, when I take an agility lesson, is looking at the thing, figuring out, okay, here's where I'm going to add the crosses, practicing my footwork, and then getting my dog out and realizing that with the speed the dog is moving, maybe that plan was not such a good one after all, right? Like, it's like, holy
Yeah.
crap, I thought I was going to have, time to do this, this, and this here, and they're already like running into me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they are just like, we want to be good for them, right? Like we want to
mm-hmm.
do all of the things right, so that it can be like, it's perfect for them. They understand it and everything. And when they come out and we haven't mastered it already, and we don't have the timing and the mechanics of it down, and that dog
Mm-hmm.
just comes screaming at us, it's just like this. I've seen people with that kind of like panicked deer in the headlights look in their eyes, like, ah!
Yeah.
And so yeah, like working on it without your dog really, really helps. It's really hard to convince people to do it. And it looks silly to the neighbors while you're doing it. But we're all dog crazy. And
Yeah.
we're in it now. So let the
Fair
neighbors
enough.
think you're crazy.
Golden advice right there.
Yeah.
Um, kind of what factors are we talking about here? What do we need to be thinking about when we're training crosses to ensure that we are communicating what we're about to do to the dog while they're running on course?
So you're thinking about a couple of factors that are really, really important is your commitment, or your dog's commitment to those obstacles. So we can't commit our dogs to those obstacles. A lot of the timing becomes really, really difficult. What I find people do a lot, beginner teams, is that they end up, and that's beginner dog with experienced handler, or both of them beginners, is
Mm-hmm.
that people have a tendency to kind of band-aid their handling to support their dog more, when they would more benefit from teaching more commitment, or
Mm-hmm.
utilizing reward placement to help the dogs understand to go and commit to something while I continue to do my cross, rather than getting closer to the obstacle to help the dog, because then that messes up your timing, right? So you need to have,
Yeah.
there's kind of some core crucial skills that you need to have in place before you really start to focus on that timing. Or you can use reward placement to help create the commitment that you want, so that you can really focus on your timing. And the more confidently you can do that cross, then the easier it's going to be for your dog to commit to.
Interesting. So the two pieces really kind of play on each other, in other words.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So a big part of kind of why we're chatting about all of this, right, is because you're teaching crossing with confidence in September in the 3-week term. So talk to me a little about the class. What are you covering? Why might people want to sign up? Is it for beginners? Is it for more advanced handlers? What you got?
It is 3 weeks. Each week we're going to do one technique. We're going to kind of cover like basic techniques. We're going to start with the front cross. We're going to do the front cross for 1 week. We're going to do rear cross for 1 week. And then we're going to do blind crosses for 1 week. We're really going to like take it down, right down to meat and potatoes. And we're going to start on the ground with flat work. Then we're just going to, like I said, I talked about like splitting it down and building it back up. So start with some flat work, then add a jump, then add 2 jumps, and then add some speed. And then then we can roll into some sequencing. And I have the sequencing set up so that, if you have more equipment and more space, then I have a sequence for that. If you have less equipment and less space, I have a sequence for that. So I tried to make it really accessible to lots of people, because I know that everybody doesn't have like 100 by 80 area with all of the equipment. Some of us have like a couple of jumps and some garbage cans, and that's okay. We can still do a ton of things with a couple of jumps and some garbage cans, and a little bit of space. But I really wanted to encourage people to break things down so that they can actually really focus on those minute pieces of mechanics and timing, like right down to the finest piece, and just get really, really, really comfortable with it so that when you put it in sequences, you know exactly what you're doing. By really dialing it back. I mean, it's great for beginners because then we can kind of slowly add things in and it doesn't feel overwhelming. But if you're finding that there are missing pieces and you're a bit more of an advanced team, going back and looking through those finer details and really splitting it back down, you can figure out where those missing links are. To creating that extra little bit of flow that you want, the extra little bit of speed that you want. It's in the details. It's not in the overall end execution. It's in kind of breaking it down and finding out where that little missing link is.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I mean, that sounds like it'll be great for kind of a wide variety of teams.
I think so. Yeah. If you are I think I've geared it more towards the beginner, but seeing from experience that as an advanced handler, there's still lots of timing things. Like even going back for me through this material as I was making it and doing the demos, there's still areas that I can kind of clean up, that I can dial in because I've split it down. I think the more sequencing we do, we can kind of lose some of those details because we're focused on getting through, which, hey, is a skill. We need it.
Yep.
If you can't get through a course, you're not going to get to trial. But going back and really kind of focusing on those details now and again in those little tiny splits, so helpful.
Yeah. In all things in dog training, splitting things down, right?
Exactly.
Strong foundations and splitting things down.
Yeah, and for the people and the dogs, I think we often think of it for the dogs, but we don't give ourselves the same grace. We try to expect ourselves to learn something in a full sequence at full speed. And that's not how it worked. When we started learning how to walk, we didn't do it. We didn't just jump up and run. We wobbled and we fell over. And then we started to take tentative steps that were wobbly still. And then before long you are running, learning those crosses is the same thing. When you first start doing them, you're going to wobble. I've seen people fall. I've fallen over. It happens. But, as you do it more, you're going to become more graceful. And then it's like dancing with your dog.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about all this, Laurie.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And thanks to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in. We'll be back next week, this time with Karen Deeds, to talk about the importance of considering your cues. If you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast either in iTunes, the podcast app of your choice, or over on YouTube to make sure you never miss an episode. Today's show is brought to you by the Fenzi Dog Sports Academy. Special thanks to Denise Fenzi for supporting this podcast. Music provided royalty-free by bensound.com. The track featured here is called Buddy. Audio and video editing provided by Chris Lang. Thanks again for tuning in, and happy training.